When you are in a small C and you're a niche podcast, I never know if it's niche or niche. You know what I'm talking about. If you're a niche podcast, guess what? You have the opportunity to get in front of sponsors a lot quicker, because I have a client who they get about 300 downloads an episode, but thus far they've gotten a little over $10,000 in sponsorships in just one season. Hey guys, it's Anna Agogo, founder of Black Pod Collective, Black Pod Festival, and Adode Media. And I know for you guys who tune in from week to week, you're probably like, Anna, for the love of God, can you start this another way? No, I can't. Because I want to make sure that those who are just joining us know what this show is about and who I am. So I'm the host of the Podcast Trapper, which is your one-stop shop resource for all things podcasting. And today I really want to talk to you guys about how to make money in podcasting. Like, it's one of those things where I think oftentimes we're always looking for sponsors and people to really give us money in this situation. But quite frankly, there's so many avenues and there's so many things that have come out in 2023 alone. It's consistently changing. So let's kind of dive into what are maybe 6 different ways that you can make money from your podcast. So I'm going to first tell you what those items are and then kind of break it down a little bit. This isn't really intended to be a how-to, but this is more of a so you can understand what options are available to you. I know it's a lot of work and sometimes a lot of money that goes into putting your podcast together. And it would be nice for us to be able to make some money from that. I tell people all the time, and I know you guys are like, Anna, you're always telling people something. You're right, I am. I tell people all the time about the fact that I started this podcast because I want to be able to get in front of my target audience so they can see the work myself, my team, my studio, what we do here. And so for me, getting clients is how I make my money from this podcast. Now, let me make sure I say, if you're a podcast brand or anything like that who wants to work with us, trust me, this podcast will also still work with you. But the main premise is my business. And so that's one element, but let's quickly talk about them. 1 is affiliate marketing. 2, your community, listeners. 3, paid ads. 4, live events. 5, merchandise. 6, digital products. So that's just to kind of give it to you right out the gate. These are the different things we're going to talk about. But let's kind of break it down a little bit more. Affiliate marketing is, let's say I gave you a code indicating that, hey, anytime you talk about the studio and anytime you talk about the services that we offer, you'll get a discount for anytime somebody utilizes that code. That's affiliate marketing in essence. I don't necessarily like affiliate marketing, and here's my reason. Because in essence, I'm giving your brand some brand awareness because people are now knowing about it. Like, they're hearing about it a little bit more. But if when they realize that they're ready to commit, they're ready to utilize that product, they may not remember to come back to my specific link to sign up for that. Now, everybody's community, everybody's listener is drastically different. So it could be different for your audience. Your audience may be the type of audience that takes action right away. That is not the case for me. My audience takes some time. They need to see it in action, hear about it a little bit more before that they feel like they're actually ready to kind of get this thing started. So I've never really been a proponent for affiliate marketing just because of the fact that I've helped you gain brand awareness. And let's be honest, when you put an ad on a television station or a big name platform, they're expecting for you to pay those ad dollars. So why is this any different when it comes to me kind of giving you some brand awareness? But it's all dependent. Here are ways that I think affiliate marketing work really well. So for example, if you're looking at the show notes or anything like that, I have different ebooks and ebooks and workbooks about podcasting. So whether it's how to create engaging show notes, podcasting 101, a checklist, well, guess what? In those documents, I have some affiliate links. Now, those documents are for sale. So you're paying anywhere from $5 to $20 for something. So I've already kind of generated some income from it. And then if you purchase something utilizing that link, because at that point, you're a hot lead, hot stuff. You're a hot lead at that point. You're you're not a cold lead of somebody who's just kind of stumbling across. You've already gone into this digital product that I have, indicated you're interested in this particular element, and now you're ready to commit and make the purchase. It's a much more streamlined process. So I always say, if you're doing affiliate marketing, figure out the best way to make sure you're getting in front of your hot leads and not just cold passive listeners. So that's just some strategy around putting together affiliate marketing to work in your favor. I know some people who make thousands of dollars from affiliate marketing, especially larger platforms. And then there's some people who are like, I've made $5. And guess what? $5 is more than what you had yesterday, so there's nothing wrong with that. Next up is your community and your listeners. For those who are aware, I'm the founder of Black Pod Collective, and that was my very first brand that I launched. With that brand, I monetized pretty quickly. So at first we were doing live events that had a cost to it, meaning I was pulling things together from the community so that this way people could learn how to podcast, learn how to monetize, learn and network with each other. Those events cost anywhere from $10 to $20, and that was generating some money. However, I took it one step further by creating a community out of my listeners and out of those who supported me. And so we started off with tiers of $5, and it went all the way up to $20. Now that's where you're getting your listeners and your community to support you by creating some form of a membership. Now the thing about memberships that I tell people all the time is that it is work. If I am giving you money monthly, guess what I expect? Monthly content, monthly value. It's not a one-time thing like a digital product. It is active support, active follow-up. It does require a lot, and sometimes it may be more than you thought that you can really chew. The next thing with that is something a little bit more passive. So having a Patreon. Patreon does a really good job of allowing you to put together little free things, whether it's BTS content, whether it's additional episodes that they would not get unless they're a part of your paid community. Like people with the Podcast Trapper keep asking me, are you guys going to provide any how-tos? And I keep saying no, but in actuality, I might do a Patreon where I provide you with some how-tos, things that are a little bit more in-depth, aka like, what are some of the things that I utilize to find content? How do I help clients in more in-depth fashion? And what are some of the platforms that have paid us to create content here in the studio? Those are things that I feel like should probably be behind a paywall. And that's where Patreon can help you, because you're thinking a little bit deeper, going a little bit further than just surface level what you might be covering. It could be that you only have videos for your Patreon. It could be that you only have certain guests that you know are super big that people want to hear from on your Patreon. So you have to be strategic as to how you utilize Patreon. Now, if you're like, you know what, I don't want to try to manage a Patreon and something else, well, Apple, I want to say that was last year or maybe the year before, released Apple subscriptions. Now, here's the thing. Apple subscriptions, they do take a fee. They take a percentage out of that, but it allows for you to kind of put some of your content behind a paywall. That's in essence when you are tapping into your listeners. And the big advantage there, and I want to say Patreon does it, Buzzsprout recently released subscriptions. So there's various ways that you can go about this. Here's where I find this beneficial. If your audience really loves the content that you're putting together, I always tell people, let them know that, hey, this is how much it costs to bring you this on a weekly basis. This is what goes into this. And in order for me to keep bringing this content, if you know this is something you want to see and have, then guess what? I need your support. I need your help in making this happen from week to week. Talk to your audience. Don't feel like you have to I have to provide you with so much value. No, there's some people who are just so happy to see that you are creating this content that they will $5, $2 to help you continue to bring it to life. Keep in mind, $2 across 100 people, across 500 people, that's $2 you didn't have yesterday, and it adds up over time. So I find that tapping into the audience that you've built and your listeners is a really great way to make money in podcasting. Next up is coaching. Now, I tell people all the time, everybody should not be coaching you on how to do a podcast, because everybody who has a podcast is not a podcast coach. I just want to put that out there first. No shade, but all the shade all at the same time. And so keep this in mind because coaching can work for your industry. Let's say you have a podcast about health and wellness. You yourself could be a doctor. Let's say you're a mental health strategist, whatever the case may be. You could have a podcast about that as well as provide training and coaching for people in that same avenue, that same guys. I know people who are doctors who also have podcasts about the medical industry, and then they coach people of how to navigate the medical industry. And to me, that's a great trifecta right there. Quite frankly, I could coach people on podcasting, but it's just not something I'm interested in at this time. Next up is paid ads. Now, this I think is the most popular thing that most people go after. It's the piece that people are always like, I want to get sponsors. The moment people launch their podcast, it's one of the first things they say to me. When I ask them, what's the goal of this show? What's your 3-year, 4-year, 3-month goal? And people within a month are interested in monetization. Well, guess what? I hate to be the one to tell it to you. Monetizing your podcast is very possible, and I'm not here to say that, it's going to take 5 years, 6 months. No, if you know your niche and you're super specific, you could really monetize quite quickly. If you haven't watched the past episode where I talk about podcast niching and the importance of it and how it really helps you get in front of that target audience, make sure you go ahead and tune into that. I'll make sure it's linked below. But here's the thing. When you are in a small C and you're a niche podcast, I never know if it's niche or niche. You know what I'm talking about. If you're a niche podcast, guess what? You have the opportunity to get in front of sponsors a lot quicker because I have a client who they get about 300 downloads an episode, but thus far they've gotten a little over $10,000 in sponsorships in just one season. The reason for that is it's such a small market, and 300 people for a market that small means a lot for a small business. And so when you're looking at paid ads, there's a few things that I want you to think about. One, I always tell people, look at who is sponsoring other podcasts in your niche. So if you know that, hey, I have a mental health podcast, we all know BetterHelp is literally sponsoring everybody these days. And understanding, okay, who are some of the big names that are sponsoring and who are the people who are probably a little bit smaller scale that might be sponsoring as well. But also look within your community. So I always tell people, instead of always going for these large brands, look at some of these smaller brands. What is a mental health clinic that may have opened up in your area? Mental health services, a new therapist that may be around the corner. That makes a difference. Looking at the data of where your listeners are located can take you very far. If you have 100 people who are listening over a 30-day period in Atlanta, and you know this small clinic that just opened, guess what? That small clinic, that's 100 people that will know about them that didn't before. So if you're going for ads, I say think of smaller brands instead of always going for the big one. Another thing with this is larger brands are typically looking based off of downloads. So they have a cost per download, meaning let's say it's $50 for every 1,000 downloads. Well, if you're not getting 1,000 downloads over a 30-day period, I know sometimes people feel like, well, wait, what are my options if that's the case? I say bundle things. What I mean by this is you start looking at your newsletter, your social media, your podcast, and you bundle that together, your website even. These 4 different avenues are different avenues of content. So stop looking at it as in, I'm just pushing my podcast. No, you're a platform at this point. I tell people all the time, look at your podcast as a media agency, as a media outlet, and bundle it as such. This means you could put your social media together, your newsletter, your website traffic, as well as your podcast content, so that this way you can create a more robust package. I know I went down a rabbit hole as it relates to paid ads, but quite frankly, I want us to stop thinking of paid ads as just within our podcast, which is, your pre-roll, which is before the episode starts, your mid-roll, which is in the middle, and your post-roll. Those are great avenues, but there's so many other things that you can think of so that this way you can make money from your podcast. But let's kind of go on to the next thing, live events. Now, this is something I would love to do because I don't know if you picked up on this, but my personality is a lot and I love it here. And so does everybody else. At least that's what I tell myself. And it's one of those things where it's like, I think it would be fun for people to see this personality live and in person, because I think sometimes people think that this is just for the internet. No, this is how I am in real life. And so with that in mind, live events allows for you to connect with your audience. This means doing a live show. I know some people who do this really amazingly. Cocktails and Dirty Discussions, Good Moms, Bad Choices. They all have amazing live shows that are very entertaining. People purchase tickets to come to them. They sell merch at them. They partner with different organizations and they take it up a notch. I mean, I would love to do one, but quite frankly, Black Pod Festival is already the live show. I'm not doing any other event. So sorry to tell you guys. Maybe down the line when I have a team of 50 people who can manage just that. But live events is another great way because it allows for you to connect with your audience, for them to bring guests and other people who can, get to experience you live and in person, because podcasting is all about the relationship your audience is building with you, the individual. Like I tell people all the time, when you bring guests onto the show, don't let your show be taken over by the guest. Allow for it to be something where it's like, you guys are in this together and it's not just like you've checked out, because people are returning week after week for you. Next up is merchandise. Now, y'all, when I figure out what this look is going to be, Q is over here and she doesn't know it yet, but she's going to create the bombest, the Podcast Trapper merch. I'm ready for it because you see how this is holding up some money, and today we're talking about, how to make money. I feel like I need something that's Podcast Trapper with some cash. But that's what merch entails. Merch can be a saying that you say all the time. Merch can be just your podcast name, because guess what? Your audience is supporting it. Black Pod Collective, I know, shameless plug, has merchandise that is about podcasting. So there's one that's listen to my mixtape, but it crosses out mixtape and it says podcast. I need to wear that next. Because it's basically podcasting is the new mixtape. I don't know, how old or young my audience is. I might be aging myself right now. But back in the day, people used to walk up to you with their mixtape and be like, hey, check this out. Well, guess what? That's what podcasting is like. And that's what the merch basically entails. But you have to think about, what is it that your audience likes? What are sayings that would resonate with them? What are things that you say all the time? And turning that into merchandise that is needed for them. My audience is mainly podcasters. So it makes sense for me to have t-shirts that resonate with podcasters. I could have headphones, so on and so forth. Headphone cases. You just have to be strategic as well as creative in what that could look like. Last but not least is digital products. Now, digital products can be a little bit of work because you have to make sure it's of value. I'm very big on, I never want somebody to purchase something and feel like, why did I just spend my money on this? So digital products could be something specific to your niche. Let's say you have a podcast about birthing. The birthing process, doula services, so on and so forth. It might be advantageous to have a digital product around what to look for in a midwife, what to look for in a doula, what to pack when you're having a baby, what to expect when you're expecting. Something that's simple and to the point that resonates with your audience. And that's the thing. For example, I have a digital product that talks about 10 ways to repurpose one podcast episode. So that's from a blog, so on and so forth. I have another one that talks about what to include in your show notes to increase your discoverability. I have one on how to start a podcast. The list is long because, once again, my audience are podcasters, and this is the type of content that they need and are looking for. So it's important for you to know who your audience is, what they're looking for, so that this way you can understand what they would be willing to purchase in a digital product. So that was the breakdown of the 6 different avenues, but trust me when I say there's so many other things that you could do for making money in podcasting. This is just scratching the surface. I mean, we haven't even talked about editing and producing other people's shows. These are just the things that are don't really require for you changing your job. So I hope that as we start looking at ways to look at podcasting as more than just a hobby, but also a career choice, a side hustle, another avenue to make money and generate income, that you start taking your hobby a little bit more seriously. So I hope you found this information helpful, because I'm excited for it, For me, I'm not interested in necessarily making money for my podcast specifically, but instead you coming to utilize the space and our services. So hope you found this helpful. And until next week, you guys have a good one.